So, a little bit about Cath here. Cath is an experienced naturopath and nutritional therapist with over 10 years clinical experience, with a special interest in working with clients with chronic exhaustive conditions. Cath is a member of the Federation of Holistic Therapists, as well as the Federation of Nutritional Therapy Practitioners. She is an accredited specialist practitioner with the Chrysalis Effect and a well-being coach since 2015. Cath is trained in family dynamics and has undergone further training to be able to recognise and understand the effect of trauma and adverse childhood experiences, which everybody tends to know as ACEs. She's currently training in health kinesiology. The endless list of debilitating symptoms that accompany any chronic exhaustive condition are often due to an overflowing burden of emotions and stressors, which leads to an ever-increasing sensitivities, including food sensitivities, a weakened gut microbiome, inflammation, and constant sympathetic dominance and fatigue. Cath uses nutrition and naturopathy to rebalance the body, and with special emphasis restoring the gut, the digestion, and the gut microbiome, reducing food intolerances and supplement intolerances, improving cellular energy by rebalancing the thyroid and adrenals to reduce fatigue and to calm the body and the mind, in order for the body to move back towards perfect well-being. Well, Cath, welcome. That is an impressive array of stuff, isn't it? Could you explain the difference between naturopathy and, or rather, just what naturopathy is and the techniques that you use?
Sure, absolutely. So naturopathy just means nature cure. That's what it means. And it sort of has its fundamental principle in the healing power of nature. So it's just a complementary medicine that emphasizes the body's own ability to heal itself when it has the right nutrients and the right information going into it. It can then help itself. So a naturopath is a natural health professional who aims to support all the patients towards well-being. Yeah, so you get acupuncturists, homeopaths, etc., are all naturopaths, and I choose to use nutrition mainly for my main modality. Yeah, to help heal people. So we try to, as we assess the any imbalances, intolerances, and deficiencies or excesses, and try to then readjust those and rebalance those to bring about well-being. And I use mainly nutrition and a few herb supplementation in order to do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Cath, because so often people think, oh, naturopath, oh, I'm not sure what that is. But you explained that brilliantly. Thank you so much. So what is the difference between, because this is another question I think that is burning on people's lips very often, the difference between a nutritional therapist and a dietitian?
Well, they are very similar, and it is very confusing for a lot of people, that's for sure. There is a lot of similarities between what they do, but a dietitian essentially is looking just purely at diet based on medical conditions. So what is the best diet for a specific medical condition? And as far as my understanding is, it doesn't necessarily look at the cause of the medical condition and trying to look at how we can resolve that or improve that or rebalance something, not cure, because you can't use the word cure, but you can balance that word, that the issue. So nutritional therapists are looking for the root cause and trying to find that to help rebalance the body. That's kind of the main difference.
Yeah, so it's a real long-term thing, isn't it, rather than just sticking a plaster over the top and hoping it goes away. Yeah, that would explain. Yeah, that would explain the whole thing beautifully. Thank you. So we both specialise in chronic exhaustive conditions under the umbrella of the Chrysalis Effect. What made you choose this area and specialise with this?
Well, when I first trained, while I was trained, they kept saying, "Oh, you've got to have a specialism. You've got to have a specialism," and it's such a broad niche. There's a broad market of things that nutrition can help cover. But I found that people were coming to me mainly with stress and fatigue issues. And I had a couple of people in particular that came in that had more than that. And there was something, even with all the usual techniques of trying to help them, there was something else that I couldn't quite get to. And then I went on a seminar thing, and the chrysalis effect were there. And I spoke with Elaine and realized that the missing piece was actually learning more about how we can then treat chronic fatigue by looking at the whole body as a complete thing. So then I did the training to become a specialist practitioner, and I did that since 2015. I think I've trained her. So I've been doing it a while now, and then added to the training mainly. Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful thing about Elaine, isn't it? Her passion has sort of spread for the rest of us, and I think we're all just as passionate, having chosen this niche to be in. And it's there's so much.
So many people who've got fatigue issues and it's driven by stress, and it is just phenomenal how many people we can now try to help by going through the chrysalis effect. So it's brilliant.
And that's also the thing, isn't it? Because very often they may not come to you specifically looking to deal with chronic fatigue, because sometimes they don't even recognize that that's where they are, and that's our great strength, isn't it? We can go in there and say, well, actually, have you considered this? Or it could be due to this. And then very often there's an aha moment of, oh, maybe this person knows what she's talking about. So yeah. Okay, so how do you find the right diet for somebody with chronic exhaustive conditions, those fibra, CFS? Because energy is always a problem.
It is, yeah. It's always a tricky one, and you've got to make sure that you're meeting the diet for that particular person. So it is tricky, but there are some basics. Generally, cutting out certain foods that we know are inflammatory, like gluten, dairy, sugar, they're the biggies to cut out. But whether you follow a paleo diet or a ketogenic diet or vegetarian diet or vegan diet really depends on the person. Dr. Myhill suggests that we should be following a paleo ketogenic diet, and I'm starting to work a little bit more towards that with a lot of clients, but not categorically. I'm trying to make sure that the clients I work with the clients for what they need, because there's certain people who are vegans, who are strict vegans, who don't want to move to, and won't and can't move to eating more animal products for various reasons, ethics normally. So I also find that a lot of clients have a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and so by reducing certain foods that fall under the FODMAPs categories, then that can help them to start to alleviate those particular symptoms. So it's kind of symptoms based to a point to see which ones are the most relevant for each person. And that's all you can do, really. You have to look at the person and see what's right for that particular person, because even good foods for one person may be not really good foods at all. So you have to be bit discerning, really, as to which foods you suggest to them and which ones you take out. Yeah, does that help?
It certainly does help. I think what's lovely with this is it comes across that it is very much a personal thing. It's very individually tailored, and just listening to you saying that, it's quite clear. It's not you've got this, therefore you take this, or and that is so reassuring to hear, because we are all individuals and so very, very different. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Cath. That was great. So, any specific tests that you would recommend that have been beneficial for somebody with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia?
There are lots of tests we could do, and the best ones that I utilise are stool tests, adrenal stress profile tests, thyroid tests, and the SIBO test, so the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They're the most common ones. But I often use an organic acids test that can give us quite a lot of information, a broader range of things throughout the whole body, including gut as well as liver and various different, all the body systems. That gives quite a good idea. But then I also like genetics fall into that as well. I'm now trained in doing genetic testing so that you can see whether even sometimes what happens is, even though you're doing the right protocols for certain people and you're following the right things are not working for them. You're expecting a certain result from doing a certain way with certain supplements or certain foods, but something's not working. So by looking at their genes, you can sometimes get a better indication as to why that might be, and so you have to then tweak it accordingly.
Yeah.
That's a big one now, and there's a lot of markers now that are particularly to do with the liver, with methylation. A lot of people with chronic fatigue have methylation issues, and which is one of the detoxification methods through the liver. And if that's not, and it's a really major pathway, so if that's not working properly through either genetic variations or just the body's not working optimally and they're not got the right nutrients, then that's a key area to work on to try to bring back into balance.
Yeah. Again, it's looking at the body as a whole, isn't it? The person as a whole, and then the body as a whole, which I, again, think is deeply reassuring. Okay, so how do you go about reducing food and supplement sensitivities so that recoverers are able to improve their tolerances?
We look at the gut, heal the gut, look at what imbalances are there, first of all, and then if there is any permeability going on, intestinal permeability, or the layman's term is leaky gut, then we can, through supplementation, usually, we can help to resolve that and make them stronger so that they can start to eat some of those foods again. But I also looking at emotional imbalances, because when their emotions, when they've got too many negative emotions going on, there's too much stress going on, then they are, that we call that sort of the emotional cup is overflowing. There's no way they can fit anything else in, and they become more and more sensitive. So we have to look at the emotional side of things as well as looking at healing the gut to reduce those food sensitivities down and to make that stronger there. So that's kind of what I tend to work on, so calming the nervous system down, so that reducing that stress response. That's a massive.
It's just so fascinating. Endlessly on this, couldn't you? Right, so what's your vision for your clients and what can you offer them?
I try to empower my clients to take responsibility for their own health, and normally by the fact that they've come to see a natural health practitioner anyway, they already are, and it's about empowering them to take that responsibility on, so that we can look at using natural products to heal the body, and to that might include food, it might be herbs, it might be flower remedies, it might be acupuncture, it might be kinesiology, or whatever, to help to just realign, bring those things back in line. That's kind of my vision, is to empower everybody to be able to start to help themselves. And I'm not saying get away from the health system, that's not what I'm talking about at all.
Yes, no.
But it's just that responsibility for that whole well-being. That's, yeah.
Which is a wonderful thing to be able to give somebody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Cath. That was absolutely fascinating. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Hello, Cath.
Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, it's always nice to spend time together.
So, Brigitte is a member of the Federation of Holistic Therapists, and she's trained as a health kinesiologist and has further qualifications in nutrition advice, anatomy and physiology, counselling skills, and business and management skills. Brigitte is a Reiki master practitioner and has been since November 2000. Since qualifying as a wellbeing coach and becoming an accredited specialist with the chrysalis effect, Brigitte now specialises with chronic exhaustive conditions. She's trained in family dynamics and has undergone training to be able to work with trauma and adverse childhood experiences. The approaches Brigitte uses trace the cause of the body's energy imbalances to its root deep within our psyche. Our natural flow of energy always tries to move towards perfect well-being. However, when faced with difficulties in our lives that we find too difficult or too painful to accept, we tend to hold on to this unresolved energy in our body. And this creates imbalances in our energy, which then depletes our vitality and can lead to a lack of well-being. And Brigitte is currently now training in EAM, energy alignment method. So Brigitte's quite an array also. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
But what I'd like to know is, we both specialise in chronic exhaustive conditions under the chrysalis effect. What made you choose this area to specialise in?
Yes, it's pretty much the same sort of thing as you, Cath, in that equally I came across Elaine, and she has shown quite a few of us the way forward, hasn't she? She's so passionate what she does, and it's definitely contagious. And once you see that there's a way that these things progress, it's not that we're dying to show other people and explain it. It's just that we are now able to say to somebody, well, that's perfectly normal, isn't it? You've been doing this, this, and this. And once you can actually illustrate that to somebody and say, well, can you see how this has happened, how you've gone down this particular route? It's normally a good starting point for people to think, oh, somebody understands me, somebody actually gets what we're going through. And I think also something Elaine said right at the beginning of training with her was that many of us have further training, as with you, Cath, you're a nutritional therapist. Because we take such good care of ourselves and we know what supplements to take when we're feeling a little bit depleted, we can generally keep ourselves well by keeping an eye on our diet, etc., etc. So some of us are very much on the verge. You know, we are driven, we are A-type personalities, as is the normal pattern for somebody with chronic exhaustive condition. But because we're armed in the way that we want to arm our clients, we kind of were able to prevent it. And I think it's that passion that Elaine once she's explained it, it's just wonderful. So it was that, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, very similar. So kinesiology is thought of as a body therapy, but how do you use it with your chronic fatigue, ME, fibro clients?
Right, yeah, it's quite an in-depth question, really, isn't it? I think, as you touched on, although in many cases we deal with physical symptoms, very often they are there in place because of the emotional side of things, as you were explaining. When we are emotionally stressed out, our body can't function as well. And it's the same in our brain. If our brain is just constantly worried about stuff and in that anxiety loop, we then can't devote the attention we need to digesting and resting and all the rest of it. So it's very much, that's where the health kinesiology comes in that I can balance a person with a kinesiology session, and we can also look at emotional aspects. And I think sometimes it kind of frightens somebody when you think, oh, we're going to look at the emotional side. I think quite a few of us get quite defensive. Oh, you're not going there. There's stuff about me I would rather you didn't know. And I think there's that block. When I'm testing somebody, I just use an arm muscle. And then I follow what we call a menu. So whatever is needed on that day to balance that particular person is not necessarily as invasive as to say to somebody, well, you need to deal with such and such. Basically, we're just saying, oh, your body wants to do that today. And we slap a magnet on, use a flip, an essential oil. And sometimes we do use thoughts and emotions. But very often they come from a list. So instead of that person feeling you're pointing a finger at them and saying, oh, you've got such and such, it's more, well, you know, loads of people feel like this about so and so. So it diffuses the situation. So with me, I think of the health kinesiology as a foot in each camp, if you like. And so we can deal with the physical, we can make them feel more balanced, more grounded by the end of the session. And we can also touch as deeply as that body will allow.
It's all about the body allowing it, isn't it? So you can go in sometimes, you want to do this and this with the client today, but their body's not ready to do that, and it'll throw something completely different out. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
And that's what's important, is it, to unravel things in the way that is correct for that person, which again is what you were saying to begin with, from a different context, but it's always that same thing. We're dealing with that individual and doing the right thing for that person at that point.
Yeah, cool, excellent, sounds brilliant. So do you have any kinesiology tips or techniques that you could perhaps share with us today, please?
Yeah, there's some great ones. Actually, I was talking to somebody this morning, and she was touching on something that I think is going to be more prevalent as we come closer to lockdown, or coming off lockdown. And that's, I think everybody's going to feel this to an extent, that anxiety about beginning to go out again, and where's it okay to go, and can you do something? And so just generally anxiety. We've got a fabulous technique, which you'll know, Cath, called the balancing tap. So we have a gland, it's on your sternum, and it's about 5 to 8 centimeters down from that middle notch here. I'm not sure if you can see, well, like, sort of roughly here. And it's a thymus gland, and that is responsible for our immune system. But it also, if you tap around it, allows your body to just balance itself and ground. So you have a moment, you're giving your body the signal that actually things are safe, it's okay. So you're rebalancing yourself. Yeah. So to actually do this balancing tap, you start on the left-hand side of your shoulder, really, and go across the top of your chest. That's to make sure you go anti-clockwise, because what we're doing is tapping anti-clockwise around this gland. So you tap around the gland in an anti-clockwise way, hard enough so you can feel it, but not so bad that you're actually bruising yourself. And if you do that for about 30 seconds, it should calm your whole system down. And it's a balance that will keep in place for a little while. So you can do it anywhere. If you're stuck in a traffic jam, you can sit there tapping yourself. And it's nothing like as weird when people can't see what you're doing. So that's a very useful one. Another one for, again, for anxiety is that when people are really overwhelmed, they very often just hold their hands, hold their head in their hands. And that is an automatic, natural response to touching neurovascular points that we have in our forehead. So these points are quite tender. You don't want to be bashing them around. So you touch them just gently. The easiest way of doing it is just to put your head in your hands, but to do it gently. When you do that, it's pretty much non-specific, because you're touching loads of points. If you've got the patience and you think you can do it, if you go to the end of your eyebrows and just take your thumbs into your hairline, that's one set of points. And then you just, from there, join your middle fingers again into your hairline on the forehead. And that is another really relaxing pose. So, I mean, that's quite a useful one.
That does look relaxing, actually. Does it matter which finger you use?
No.
Does it matter which finger you use in the middle?
No, but I think most people would struggle to get beyond the middle finger. I don't know, actually. Yeah. Whatever feels comfortable that you can hold in place, really. Again, it looks a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? Never mind. And so a more sort of, that's more on the emotional side, but you can do practical things. There's one which is called unfurling your ears. So a lot of us hold tension in our shoulders and the back of the neck. And this is, do you know, it looks weird again, doesn't it? But never mind. So on the outside edge of your ear curls inward. So this is called unfurling. If you grab your ear and firmly uncurl it, basically, all the way around from the top of the ear down to the earlobe, and you do that several times on both sides, it should help the rotation on your neck. That in itself will very often help with any stiffness or any tension that's kept in the neck. Excellent. So really, when you do this, you would first of all check to see what the rotation's like. So you'd look one way, see how far you can go, and then you'd go the other way and see how far that goes. And then if you unfurl for a bit, you can then check again to see if that's any better. And very often, you would notice a difference. So I mean, sometimes,
amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing how many little techniques there are to just to read. It's amazing, how many things there are on the body that will help to shift. It's an amazing thing, the body. Thank you, Brigitte. That was really interesting. Really loved that. That's great. And just lastly, what is your vision for your clients? What can you offer them, please?
Again, they're very similar, these our visions, aren't they? Because we're in this field to help people and to empower them to take up their lives again properly, I suppose. It's very much a case of showing somebody that they have everything they need. Sometimes we don't know how to use it because we have been overwhelmed by events in our lives, but very often it's remembering that actually, if you give yourself a chance, a lot of this we know already. But it's foremost, I suppose, is showing clients that they have a choice and they have the choice to take responsibility. So as with you can show somebody the right diet, you can show them what's going on with their adrenals and their thyroid. It's up to your client then to take that forward and say, well, ask themselves that question, am I prepared to put the work in? So at that point, they are then taking responsibility. But we all need to take responsibility. It's no point, we can point fingers in other directions and say it's because of this or it's because of that. But ultimately, we're just delaying that opportunity of being able to pick up our lives and do it for ourselves. So it's holding somebody's hand, I suppose, to show them they have everything within them. Sometimes they need a reminding, as we all do.
Yeah.